I'm going to tell you some of the scariest urban legends I have ever heard in my life. And if you don't know what an urban legend is, it's like a scary story that gets passed around from person to person, supposedly based on actual events, but no one really knows for sure. And just a quick warning before we get into these stories, because they are pretty dark, they are meant to scare you. So if you are easily scared or you're watching this right before bed, you might want to turn back now. But if you think you can handle it, then strap yourself in, because I'm about to take you on a wild ride. So the first story I want to tell you is called Beware of the Hitchhiker. This story comes from one of my subscribers, so let me read it to you. On the night of August 14th, 2009, at approximately 1 a.m., I was driving home with two friends from a local mall where we worked. We were all tired and ready to go home after our double shift. The drive home would normally take 15 to 20 minutes, but that night it seemed to be longer. It was raining heavily, so much so that I had to pull over to the side of the road a few times to let the worst of it pass. As I drove through these small towns, it became apparent that the roads were almost non-existent. Now, I am not easily frightened, but my two friends were. At this point, they had never seen roads so poorly maintained, and were getting very nervous about continuing on. All three of us agreed that we should keep going, so we continued on this treacherous road. About 10 minutes later, we saw a woman standing by the side of the road with her thumb out, hitching a ride. She looked young, maybe in her early 20s. My friends and I discussed whether or not we should pick her up. Knowing how dangerous it was to stop in these parts, we decided to risk it and picked her up. She got in without saying a word and put on the seatbelt. Then she asked us to drive just a little further. When I turned to her and asked where she wanted to go, she calmly replied, "Gas station, please." And with that, she closed her eyes. My friends and I were stunned by this response, but we dropped her off at the next gas station. When I looked over at her, she was gone. So I started to panic, but there was nothing there. That made me realize that we may have just picked up a hitchhiker who was only looking for a ride to somewhere dark and deserted so she could attack us. I still drive this road often, but I never hitchhike anymore. Okay, so when I heard this story, my mind went to hitchhiking in general and how dangerous that is. There are so many stories about people picking up hitchhikers and then them turning out to be serial killers. And I always thought that women who hitchhike alone are crazy. Like, why would you do that? You see these stories all the time. And I think it's good advice to never pick up a hitchhiker, especially at night. But yeah, let me know what you think of this story down in the comments. If you want to send me your own scary story, then you can do that down below. And next I want to tell you a story about ghosts. This story comes from a subscriber, so let me read it to you. I was working as a security guard at a mall in Northern Virginia, and we patrolled the parking lots and common areas of the mall after hours. One evening while doing my rounds, I walked past a set of double doors that led to the outside. As I reached the doors, I heard someone say my name. I paused and listened, but everything was silent except for the hum of the nearby neon sign. Assuming that I was hearing things, I continued on my route. A moment later, the same thing happened. I heard my name being called again. I turned around and slowly walked back toward the door. As I drew closer, I distinctly heard someone whisper my name. I took a deep breath, pushed open the heavy doors and stepped outside. To my surprise, there was no one there. I looked around to see if anyone was hiding nearby, but I was the only person in sight. Feeling a mix of relief and confusion, I shut the doors and moved on. However, as I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. For the rest of my shift, whenever I passed the doors, I heard my name being called. It was as though someone was trying to communicate with me. At first, I tried to ignore it, assuming that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But the whispering continued, and it became more insistent. Determined to uncover the source of the commotion, I decided to investigate. I cautiously opened the door and stepped outside once again. The cool night air sent a shiver down my spine, and I strained my ears to listen. The whispering had stopped. Just as I was about to give up my search, I heard my name again, closer than before. I spun around and saw a figure standing in the shadows at the far end of the parking lot. Adrenaline surged through me and I began to run. I pursued the shadowy figure as it moved with an eerie slowness, beckoning me to follow. My heart pounded in my chest and my breath came in ragged gasps. Despite my fear, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of curiosity driving me forward. As I closed in on the figure, I realized that it was a man wearing a trench coat. His face was partially hidden by the collar, and I couldn't make out his features, but I could feel his intense gaze upon me. Suddenly, the man turned and faced me, and I saw a pair of glowing red eyes staring back at me. Terror gripped me and I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The man took a step towards me and I stumbled backwards. My foot caught on something, and I fell to the ground with a sharp pain shooting through my ankle. I tried to get up, but my ankle gave way and I collapsed back down. The man with the glowing eyes loomed over me, and I could feel his hot breath on my face as he whispered, "Run." I don't remember how long I lay there, but eventually the pain in my ankle subsided. When I tried to stand up, I realized that my body felt weak and numb. I struggled to my feet and limped home. In the morning, I told my co-workers about my experience, but they didn't believe me. They thought I was making it up for attention. However, one of the other guards checked the security footage and saw the mysterious man walking around the property. But when he reviewed the footage from the next day, the man was gone. The security guard never saw the man again, but the experience left him shaken and he quit the next week. Okay, so this story reminds me of the bloody woman from the Black Forest. This is a ghost story that's been told for generations in Germany. It's about a woman who died tragically and then returns to Earth to warn travelers of danger. Sometimes she appears as a bloody corpse, sometimes as a ghostly apparition. Either way, if you see her, you should run. Now, I have never seen a ghost. By the way, have you ever seen a ghost? Let me know down in the comments. And next, I want to tell you a story about a creature. This story comes from another subscriber, so let me read it to you. In 2013, I was living in a small village in western North Carolina. This is a very rural area and there aren't any streetlights for miles. One evening, I was driving home from my boyfriend's house. It was about 11:30 p.m. and the sky was pitch black. I was only a few miles from my home when I saw what looked like a large dog running across the highway in front of me. The dog was skinny and grayish in color, and it seemed to blend in with the shadows. I slammed on my brakes and turned my car around to go look for it, but I couldn't find anything. Later that night, I told my mum about the dog, and she said not to worry about it. But the next night it happened again. I was driving home from the grocery store, and I saw the same dog crossing the road. My mum was with me, and she couldn't believe her eyes. It was the same skinny grey dog. Then in March of 2014, it happened again. I was driving home with my mum and sister, and we saw a group of 3 dogs crossing the highway. These dogs were huge and looked very similar to wolves. We stopped and got out to try to talk to them, but they ran away. When I was telling my boyfriend about this, he said that his grandfather had told him stories about a creature that lived in the woods behind my house. It was a big, grey, hairy thing that roamed around at night and ate roadkill. Okay, so when I heard this story, my mind immediately went to the Beast of Bray Road, which is a werewolf-like creature that is said to roam the countryside of Elkhorn, Wisconsin. And there are hundreds of reports of sightings of this beast dating back decades. Honestly, I think that there's probably some truth to this story. There's just no way that every single sighting is a hoax. So yeah, let me know what you think of this story down in the comments. And if you want to send me your own scary story, then you can do that down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.